Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 150. We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land. Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm John Webster. I'm here with Riley Thompson. Hi, Riley.
Hi, John.
Okay, I've got a question for you, and I'm going to start asking maybe different co-hosts this question because people are at different ages and stages. I'm just curious. So, I think a lot about wellness and balance and how to achieve it and all that stuff, but I wonder what other people are doing, and you can't speak for everyone, but you can speak for yourself and the people you know. And I'm wondering, do you often think about wellness and how you might achieve it? Do your friends talk about that? Or are you at your age and stage just kind of too busy living your life? What might it be?
That's a great question. I think about it more myself than I talk about it with my friends. It seems like a deeper level conversation that doesn't come up very often with my friends unless there's a reason to. I'm not going to say I don't check in with my friends. I do, and I talk to them about how their day is and what they're doing and, how they spend their time with their boyfriends, girlfriends, family, things like that. But I really don't check in with them or talk to them about wellness in any capacity unless there's something wrong or unless there's a reason to, like during a breakup or, I don't know, someone's grandparents have passed away or they failed a class or something like that. I don't really talk to them about that kind of thing, but I think personally as a student, I'm kind of surrounded with the whole self-care, personal wellness kind of discourse, so it's easy for me to just incorporate that into my life.
In the school context, and I can't remember, have you graduated? Are you still in school?
I've graduated, but I'm still in school.
Perfect. Okay, love it. Do you and people at school, do you sometimes talk about, hey, what do you want to do for a career? How do you see your life going career-wise, or what kind of jobs you're looking for, that kind of stuff?
A little bit. I think in social work, that's what I study now. I did my undergrad in psychology, but now that I'm in social work, I think it is kind of a more obvious question. We don't ask that as much anymore as we did when I was studying psychology, because I think psychology is just so broad. And being now a post-degree student, I think people kind of get the idea already. I like to ask people what they're going to do, but the answers are virtually all the same. You're in social work for usually one of three reasons: child welfare, corrections, maybe. It's kind of clear cut that way. So, right. Yeah, I don't really talk about that much anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because, one of the reasons why I'm doing all this stuff is because I wish I'd thought about a lot of this stuff and taken steps to work towards balance right out of university, or even before, but I didn't until after I turned 50. And, I look back and I think, why didn't I? And part of it, I think, is just I was so busy focusing on, I need to do this degree to do this. And then now what am I going to do? I'd studied philosophy. How am I going to turn that into a job? And so I'm thinking about all that stuff. And I had 2 kids while I was in university, so got to go buy diapers. I'm thinking of that stuff. But I never really thought about kind of the whole picture and what are some things I need to be thinking about so that as I move through life, I'm kind of more resilient, I'm more balanced and all that stuff. And, for example, you said when you're talking to your friends, it sometimes comes up when there's an issue. Often something not great happened. Someone passed away, someone's having stress, breakup, bad mark. I think, if we can start building up our areas of wellness through activities, then we can become more resilient. So when those bad things happen, we're a little bit more resilient. It does sound like your experience is similar to mine, that kind of at your age and stage, it's out there, but you're probably more focused on other stuff.
Yeah, I like to think I'm from a family who is open about talking about those kinds of things, where my parents, they do like to check in, and they very much are light beams showing me which way to go and kind of where my life could go with school, with careers, what I should be thinking about. Right now I'm working on master's applications, so I constantly have those on the back burner. thinking about where in social work I want to go with my life. So I may not talk about it a lot, but I think that's because a lot of my friends have also graduated already. So they're in their careers already. Like they're building their life and I'm still in the textbooks. So I think it depends a lot on who you associate with and, where you come from too.
It's a little unfair because I have a certain perspective that I'm trying to ask about, and most people don't have that perspective. Like, so for what I'm thinking, for example, is on the approach I like now, I'm trying to build up these areas, right? So I'm trying to build up my intellectual wellness, and I do that by exercising my mind. I realize how important physical health is, and so I exercise and I eat right and that kind of stuff. In terms of the environment, I realize how important the environment is overall to me and everybody. And so I try and put myself in a good environment, both at home and whatnot and at work, but also protect the planet, all that stuff. So, and I feel like I need to be working on all these different areas in order to be working towards balance at any time. But when I was younger, there always seemed to be some goal I was working towards that kind of took the focus, right? Like I was putting out the fire that was in front of me. And I wasn't really thinking about all these other areas and how they can interact.
Mm. It's easy to, I guess, let kind of one area of your life take over everything else. Like I was going to argue you were technically focusing on certain areas of wellness, just maybe not the same areas that you focus on now. You may have been, a little more ignorant to environmental wellness or spiritual wellness when you were younger. Probably like I am, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that kind of thing. But it's funny how, I guess it just comes with life experience, I think. It's such a cliche answer or cliche response to everything you just said, but...
Yeah, it's a real catch-22 because like part of me wants to, go to a university and say, let me, put on this little presentation and get people thinking about an approach that seems to work. It's practical and all that stuff. But I wonder, if people would be interested. Maybe not, because that's not what's important right now. What's important right now is getting my assignments done, getting my applications done, that kind of stuff. It sounds like maybe that's true.
I think it's a good thing that you want to talk to other co-hosts about this because I think you're going to get a really different answer depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's perfectly relevant, even though I may not think about wellness in my day-to-day life. I do think it's important, and I do try to make time for it in whatever capacity, but there could be someone out there who likely has a very different perspective and may not even consider wellness. And like I said, unless maybe a friend is grieving or something.
Yeah, and I guess where I'm coming from is it would be nice if people were exposed to different frameworks because, yeah, we all know we want to feel good mentally. We all know we want to feel good physically. We all know we want some consolation when bad things happen to us. For example, if I said to you, if you wanted to try and work towards a work-life balance, what is involved with a work-life balance? Like, what are you actually trying to balance? I'm not going to put you on the spot. You can feel free to jump in if you want, but I'm going to guess that you'd have a hard time articulating what you're balancing in a work-life balance.
Yeah, I will admit I did have a bit of a panic there when you asked that question because I don't have a straightforward answer right off the top of my head, right? It's so nuanced that way.
Yeah, like a lot of people are like, well, I want a work-life balance, but sometimes I ask them, well, what do you mean? Like, what are you trying to balance? Well, like I'm working too much. Okay. It's work versus not work. Like, what's the life part? Obviously, people would say things like, well, I want to spend time with my friends. I want to spend time with my family. I want to sleep more, exercise, all that stuff. And then it's like, okay, well, let's start talking about that. And by the way, is work bad? Like is work-life balance, is it because I can't work all the time because work is bad? I don't think so. I think work is really rewarding and can be amazing. Maybe part of work-life balance is, how do I find a career I love? That's what I think we could use some more discussion about is people, especially in school age days, when they're setting themselves up for example, I think that it would be really helpful for someone to have a good sense of a framework of wellness for their life before they make a decision on what career they want. I'll give you a perfect example. Until you know what kind of stuff that you want as part of your life, like what luxury level of cars, house, clothes, and all that stuff you're going to want as you go forward, and how many vacations and all that stuff. You can't really figure out what salary you need to sustain it. And until you know kind of what salary you're kind of looking for, it's kind of hard to figure what job meets that salary. And I don't have any judgment on, like, if you say to me, well, John, I want to live in a big house in a nice neighborhood and have 2 cars and go on month-long vacations every year. Hey, knock yourself out. But that's probably going to cost you a lot of money. You're going to need an income in the hundreds of thousands as opposed to tens of thousands, right?
Yes, but that almost sounds like a level of soul searching that so many people don't prioritize or don't think is an option for them, or just don't even realize is there. Like you say, if people had a certain framework of wellness, or if they could almost take the time to figure out where they want to go in life or what kind of life they see for themselves, then it could maybe help them, determine their salary or determine their career or whatever. But it just, that takes me back to high school when I was doing career cruising and trying to figure out what job I wanted. And like that me has changed dramatically to who I am now, to who I will be at your age, like I feel like as great as that would be and as insightful and educational I think that would be for so many people, I don't know how you would implement something like that.
And that's, I guess, my point. And I guess we'll just have to leave it at that, which is, sure, it would be nice if people in high school and university could think about the frameworks. And it doesn't have to be the one that I'm presenting, but something so that you can have a framework for how you're going to work towards balance and wellness. And you're trying to think about that at different times of your life. Things change, your plans can change, but at least you have a framework that's guiding you. Come back to the question I asked, are you and your friends talking about it? It doesn't sound like it's a priority issue at your age to the people you know and to yourself. So I just find that very interesting, and I'm going to keep working to try and make it a priority.
I'm glad.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the categories of intellectual and mental wellness. Curiosity is one of my favorite traits in myself and in others. And today we get to speak with Susan Lazar Hart about nurturing your curiosity. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Susan Lazar Hart pursued a Master's of Fine Art and became a professional painter while raising 4 children. She contracted heavy metal poisoning unexpectedly, forcing her to put down her beloved paintbrushes. And this was a catalyst to her next adventure, discovering the world of homeopathy, deeper intuition, and healing. Susan is a transformational mindset coach and speaker. She's worked with women around the world to change their thoughts, beliefs, and habits. She's a trained and certified mindset coach who created her own method of transformation, the Congruent Living Method and Academy. And her newest book, Breaking Free, Your Unique Path to Fearless Living, leads readers on a transformational journey of self-discovery to break free from the cycles holding them back. Okay, so Susan, when we were setting up our chat, you mentioned that smartphones can keep us from being curious. And how do you see the effect of smartphones in that area?
That's such a great question, especially today. Especially today. For the most part, this reality encourages us to be controlled. How much easier is it to control a group of people than having them become addicted to their smartphones? Now, most people, when they wake up in the morning, they don't wake up and breathe and move. They reach for their phone. Many people actually answer their phone when it rings in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So we now have this entity, we'll call the smartphone or stupid phone, whatever you want to call it, that has entrained us to reach for it when we're bored, when we have a question, when we want to be creative, when we want to pass time. So we no longer stand in a grocery store and make eye contact or have a conversation with our neighbor. We no longer phone a friend and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? I've just listened to something today that was horrific of how many teenagers are committing suicide based on this bot, B-O-T, that is a supposedly therapist that they turn to. Now, for people who don't know, who are listening, I'm assuming your audience does, but AI just goes for the bell jar. It goes for data. And so for people to believe that a thing will give them more information about how they feel, we are sensate organs. We are made to feel, touch, taste, laugh, experience emotions. The smartphone is telling you what emotion to feel. And then the thing is, once you click in, the algorithms start telling you, oh, and you want more of this, and you want more of this. And how many of us have sat there for 25 minutes watching somebody make French bread?
Right. Well,
and all of a sudden you look down and you go, oh my God, I meant to go for a walk. Or, gee, I was going to write a poem. Or I was going to phone a friend. Or I was going to do something that had to do with me.
Yeah, and it turns out to be a distraction. A couple small points off what you said based on anecdotes. I remember listening to a podcast a long time ago, and somebody from Australia was talking about how it's a great way to start the day for physical health reasons. And he can do it better in Australia than I can in winter in Canada. But he says first thing he does, gets out of bed, puts his feet on the ground outside, and lets the sun hit his eyes. And you're right. For most people, the first thing we do is reach for our phone. Yeah. And the second quick anecdote is that a little while back, well, actually some months ago, I stopped bringing my phone to the bedroom. And I have to say, it made a really positive difference. And now, for kind of a weird reason, because my other thing I was using for music doesn't work well, I tend to bring it to the bedroom sometimes, but now I don't look at it, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can just see how it just takes over.
Well, the other thing too is you tend to define yourself by the likes, people who are addicted to TikTok and this and that, and how many likes did I get? And oh, they didn't like that, therefore they didn't like me. So there must be something wrong with me and the way I'm creating my life if I'm not getting the likes, the hits, the whatever that is. Again, since COVID, we there's an epidemic of loneliness. And people have been taught and entrained to turn to their phones, to turn to the streams, Netflix, whatever it is, to assuage that loneliness. Then what happens when you shut the phone off or shut the TV off or whatever that is? It's you. You're with you, and we need to teach those tools again of what it's like to actually experience being alive.
Today, I went to the washroom, and as I was leaving, someone comes in looking at the phone in the washroom, and I'm like, they're using it like continuously. So let's say that we can put the phone down.
Yep.
What are some of the ways, and maybe just be a little more present? Do you see that as helping foster curiosity or connecting with our curious side?
Well, I think we have to be encouraged to ask questions. So for me, it's all about living in the question, connecting to a source greater than yourself. And by that, what I mean, the trees, the squirrels outside, we are all connected. We are made of the same chemicals and minerals, and we all breathe air, and we all absorb water. And so it's about starting to realize, wow, there's a whole world out there that I am made from. And acknowledge, so what would an iPhone-free Saturday feel like?
It's hard to imagine, to be honest.
Right? What if, there are certain wonderful places where they honor the Sabbath, and it's for being present with you. It's for a day of rest. And it's about being present with that. And what that gives you is you then get in touch with yourself. And so you asked me, how could we shift and change this? It's about introducing the idea of asking a question. What would bring me joy today?
Well, that's a good one.
What's my foundation? What's my intention with today? And when you ask yourself that question, there's a little that goes on in your brain. Because your brain loves the story of, no, I know I go to my Netflix or I go to my phone. No, let's change the story. Because when you start setting down your intention, what do you intend to do with this week? How do you intend to create with this week? And which part of it has nothing to do with that thing in your hand? You challenge yourself.
I've had some luck recently because I've been walking a lot, walking to work, doing other things, going for runs. And for some reason, there was like 2 or 3 days in a row where the sky and the clouds looked beautiful and different. Yeah. And so I've been toying lately, even the last couple of weeks, I've been toying with, it's funny you mentioned asking questions, trying to come up with just like a basic set of questions. So every day I'm going to go outside and ask myself, what does the sky look like? What color are the clouds? What color is the sky? Are there leaves on the ground? And, you know, all these funny little questions that aren't very deep at all. But I've been asking them, and when I notice, I just feel really good, you know, that I've kind of connected to the environment.
Well, and I know you know that from your book, Accidentally Well, we are made to move. We're made of ball and socket joints. I myself walk every morning. And why do I walk? It opens me up to a world greater than myself. And so I'm connecting to the colors of the sky, the leaves, the change in the seasons. And my body is moving, I'm moving, and it's a place to be in the question and really receive the joy of being alive.
So what are some of the kind of answers you might hear if someone asks themselves, what's my intention today? Like I know the idea of doing a to-do list. I'm going to do this and that and get the laundry done.
I love that you asked that question. It's not about a to-do list. My intention for each day could be different and could be very similar. It's set in the values of who I am. So my intention today is to do no harm. My intention with today is to discover something, stretch myself, challenge myself, look at everything that I've put aside and ask, okay, which one of these is really, really scaring me? And it's like, okay, just thinking about it, I don't have to do it, but I'm just going to think about that. And I'm going to ask myself, so how would that feel at the end of the day if I did this? And then how would it feel at the end of the day if I don't? And those are the kind of questions. You're in a conversation with you. And if we're willing to listen to the whispers of awareness, you get that good feeling of like, oh yeah, I'm the kind of person who can, whatever that is, who can reach out to that person, who can talk to my boss about a raise, who can reach out to my partner and say, this is wonderful or this isn't wonderful, who can be present with what the world is asking of me so I can then respond.
And does that come from kind of the intuition? Like, do you have kind of a set plan or do you just let it kind of come to you what my intention is going to be today?
I think you have to be present with it because we change all the time.
Right.
What might have worked yesterday might not work today. You know, for about a year and a half, I had my hip operated on, and I remember sitting in the bed saying, okay, how could I shift and change all of this? And I chose to meditate and to write what my guides were telling me, were asking of me today. And I said, I'm going to do that every day. And I did that for about a year and a half, and all of a sudden wasn't required anymore. Because I learned whatever it was I had to learn from that. Now, I still might go back to writing, asking my guides, what is it that you requested me today? Or what information do you have for me today? But the thing is, what's my intention with the day is it's always to grow. You know, unless we ask of ourselves to grow, we go backwards. We don't stay stagnant because it's impossible for us to stay stagnant. We change all the time, but we tend to lean into our stories. And so what I'm encouraging people to do is ask a question about that story. Is that really true? Like there's so many things where I'll say, I don't know how to write that, or I can't, you know, and I'm like, ask myself, is it true? Is that really true?
Maybe I can write it.
Well, if it wasn't true, what would that feel like if you did accomplish that? And say, okay, my intention for today is no negative thoughts. My intention today is to have a judge-free Monday. So you keep it open, and it also be my intention for today might be to run that mile, or might be to swim that thing, or might be to whatever it is. See, we have this big, wonderful, huge life that we've contracted into a box of what other people say and be and do. But you came here to, like Émile Zola, the French philosopher, says, you came here to shout out loud.
And the thing I love about that is if you add curiosity to any of these intentions you're talking about, so much better. I also like that, I think a lot of people were built to think, okay, I'm going to do my best at this. I'm going to be the best at that. I'm going to win this. Yeah. But that's not really what any of these intentions are about. The intentions are, I'm going to approach today with curiosity in some fashion, and maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
How can I do this? And then you're attuned and listening to ways to get through and do stuff.
Yeah. There's that wonderful thing I have on a sticky note called present, not perfect.
Yes. Another thought I've had lately, you mentioned today, I'm not going to judge. I've been thinking a lot about that and how so many of the negative things in my life are associated with being judged or judging others. And I've been experimenting with not judging. And guess what? It's a great way to live.
It's kind of cool, right? It opens it up. And you know what? It's important to remember what is the promise that you made to yourself in this lifetime by choosing this body in this lifetime. You don't have to know what it is, but if it's on the lower realm of energies, like judgment, like blame, like shame, like regret, it doesn't feel good. Well, you came here to feel good.
Yeah, and if you open yourself up to kind of the wonder of the world and let yourself experience. So I'm a lot more focused these days on trying to have experiences.
Yeah.
Trying to notice my experiences, and it's just feeling a lot better than the kind of judging and blaming and being blamed and all that.
You don't see a little baby come in and start blaming the mother because he didn't change their diaper.
No, they look at the squirrel with wide eyes and go, "What is that?"
Yeah, right. I always say you don't see one bird talking to the other and say, I'm not singing this morning. These feathers make me look fat.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually watching some birds this morning. I just was waiting for the bus and I looked up and these birds were flying around, and then they were all going together, and then they all parked themselves on a post at the same time. None of them, I don't think, were worried about their weight. But anyway, here we are at the end of the interview, and there is a question we ask every guest. But before I turn to that, I don't want to cut you off. Is there anything else you wanted to say about what we're chatting about?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that if you're caught up in anything that doesn't create greater, it's not yours to begin with. It's a story you were told. It's a belief system that you were sold. It's a way that you were entrained, and you bought it when you were very little in order to survive. And if it doesn't feel good, it's not yours. And just ask a question. I wonder what could change this. Is what I'm doing really making me feel good? It's a great question to ask. What else could I be choosing? Be in the question. Because a question opens windows and doors to possibilities.
I've really done a lot to kind of move out of the systems I grew up, as you said, being sold.
Yeah.
And it feels better to be doing things because I want to, and I know why I want to, and I feel it, as opposed to being told. So yeah. I do like that. And questions, I never really thought about it in that context. But if I go back to why I made lots of important changes in my life, I think I was asking myself questions and I found the answers, and many were surprising.
Yeah. And I bet they're all surprising because everything turns out differently than we think, but it's always what we're asking for.
So here we are at the end, and we ask every guest the same question in a context where we have lots of areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to be having them all firing on all cylinders at any given time. So we do a mini wellness check-in. So Susan, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one activity you could do to foster wellness in that area?
I would say the biggest thing for me is my office. And that I know when we clear out our space, there is more space to be in terms of creativity, in terms of how we feel about walking into that space. And I'm forever clearing the clutter, and somehow the clutter grows. And yet I realize that I'm a neurodivergent, and that's probably the best thing I could have, is to walk in and see all of this. And yet there's that tug inside of me that says, okay, today's the day. And what I realize is when I'm actually finished with something, whether, I've been in this business for 12 or 14 years, when I finish with something, it's actually feels so good to put it in a box and give it away, like all those books or all those lesson plans or whatever that is. And so I would say that's the one thing for myself that I'm like, yep, okay, I know the relief that it will bring. And it's just what I've been doing is throwing one thing away a day.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm kind of looking down, it's still kind of far away, but I'm looking down the retirement pipeline, and And when I'm walking around my house, I'm looking at stuff going, I got to get rid of those. So I'm going to have to take some inspiration from you and start working on that myself.
Well, it's interesting because I think we're going to shift where we live. We've been here for 46 years and in a couple of years. And now my question is, will I take you with me?
Yes, exactly.
I totally get what you're saying. It's a great question to ask. Will I take you with me? Like, really?
And what's neat for us is we're going to be downsizing to a condo. And we decided very intentionally that we're going to live lean. We're not going to bring a lot with us, and we're going to try and buy groceries for a few days in a row and basically just kind of live a lean lifestyle materialistically. And it's pretty exciting, actually. So we're looking forward to it.
That sounds really, really cool. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for this interview.
Thank you so much.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us. There's a thought. Popped up while running. You're going to hear this and you're going to ask yourself a question, and the answer to the question is yes. The question is John reading too much into things? The answer is yes. But I did have this as a pop-up thought, and so I'm throwing it on here. I studied history at university, and I've always loved history, so I'm often reading about history even outside of school. I've always also been interested in the classics, so ancient Greece, ancient Rome. I think that goes kind of hand in hand with people who like philosophy, because you often kind of go back and read about pre-Socratic, that's philosophy before Socrates, and then Greek philosophy, and then Roman, and then you move forward into the Middle Ages, etc., etc. One thing that I always had kind of a hard time figuring is how you could have these massive empires. So let's pick Rome, for example. How could you have an empire like Rome's that was so powerful, and then it just eventually disintegrates and gets, set by the wayside, the fall of the Roman Empire? Lots of books about it, so there are theories and you can read all about it. And then on the other hand too, at times I was reading about how the people in Rome, once they had so much, they kind of lost it. They kind of lost perspective and they started doing crazy things. You hear about the really rich eating so much that they used feathers in vomitoriums so they could eat a bunch of stuff, throw it up, go back and eat more. Meanwhile, there's other people who aren't eating anything. And you hear about the ridiculous games that started showing up at the Colosseum. They got more and more vicious, more and more spectacular, more and more kind of grotesque. It took so much for people to be entertained. I couldn't help but wonder if, in losing perspective in those ways, you've kind of lost focus on what the important things are in life. And not surprisingly, maybe there's some connection between that and these great empires collapsing, and people just, they need more and more. Their sensations have to be affected more and more and more. So that's in the back of my head. And now I start to look around at what's going on in our world in the last 10 years, 15 years. And I'm worried a little bit, because I'm like, are we going down a path like that? That we need these unrealistic things to entertain us? I'll give you a kind of a silly example. All the movies that come out right now are about superheroes, right? Like, it's all about these comic books. There's hardly any stories anymore. And I've read lots of articles about that, and including, it's really hard for a major movie making company to take a chance on a story about people, or even anything that's not already known. So you kind of have to make a movie based on something that everybody already knows about. And why not make it a superhero one at the same time? So I lament the fact that we are in this kind of crazy period where people seem to have lost interest in real life, in real stories, and they seem to need stranger and stranger things to entertain them. And now we're going back in history with wars and attacks. It's unusual. It's got me thinking. I don't think we're about to see the collapse of any empire right now, but I can't help but wonder if things are going in the wrong direction.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. So a few days ago, when we had that freaky cold snap, we had a bunch of warm days in a row, like 25, 30-ish in a row, and then out of nowhere, a day where it was like 8 degrees. It was that day, and for Rockstar Music, I was running a bucket drumming workshop over at the Shankman Arts Center here in Ottawa as part of their 15th anniversary celebration, sort of open house thing. Lots of cool stuff going on. There were, food vendors and different artisans there. There were some musical performances and some speeches and some tours, and it was super cool. Great to be a part of it. For the uninitiated, bucket drumming, it's a stack of like the Home Depot special, the 5-gallon bucket, and matching drumsticks. And I think I had 32 or 33. And I set up all the buckets, and people can come with zero experience and have a seat, and I'll work with you as a group, and we'll get you all the way to playing beats as an ensemble. You learn some basic rhythms, you learn a couple cool beats, all on some inexpensive but super loud, super fun 5-gallon buckets. It's really cool. We had a great time doing it, despite how chilly it was outside. They did have us outside, but it was good. And what I want to tell you about is a moment that happened between sort of the turnovers. A group comes and does the workshop, and then off they go to check other stuff as other people filter in to sit down. And it was in one of those lulls where one of the custodians from the art center came over and just sat down and kind of, nodded at me and smiled and picked up the sticks and went to town on the bucket. But he knew what he was doing. I could see, like, he had technique, and he knew what he was doing. And I said, "Hey, you know what you're doing." And he says, "Yeah, I used to be a drummer. I haven't played in a long time, though, just because I have arthritis. But, I saw this out here, and I thought I couldn't resist." I said, "Well, that's cool, man. Like, take as long as you want." He says, "Oh, I can't stay. I have to go back to work. But do you want to play something together before I have to go?" I was like, "Absolutely, man." So we, played a few beats together and went a little back and forth, and it was really fun. A cool experience. No pun intended, because it was chilly. But it was really cool. Anyway, that's all I've got for you. Just a neat time the other day, running a workshop, hitting some buckets, playing some rhythms, making friends. Life is good. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time, and we're doing it different today. We are all three in the same room.
Yeah.
I'm here with Elise and Sheila.
Hello.
Hello.
And you don't know it, you can't see it, but Michael is over there on the couch too with Steven. And we are kind of hoping he'd kind of gurgle a bit and stuff, but he's not, so you probably won't hear him. Anyway, so because I'm here, I'm having a great week. We came up to we have a condo in Collingwood that we get to use occasionally. It's usually rented out. But we are up here now, which is kind of closer to where Steve and Elise live. We had a couple days with Michael, so I'm very happy about that. I didn't really get any exercise in this weekend, so I got some catching up to do when I get back, and had a pretty busy week at work. But generally speaking, I'm pretty chill right now. How you doing, Chill?
Well, I'm in the same boat. I'm happy to be up in Collingwood. We got it all cleaned up, and then Elise and Stephen came up to visit, so that was really lovely. And I feel like I'm getting ready for Christmas now. Getting everything organized and trying to get all those gifts bought, and that's the big thing. When we came out to Collingwood, I was a little concerned about snow. It's snowed a lot, and now it's freezing rain, so that's all that's new with me. And what about you, Elise?
Yeah, snow is a big one.
Yeah.
Lots of shoveling this week. Oh my goodness. But this week, I think the only thing that's kind of new for me is working on our nighttime feedings. So I've been getting up with Michael in the night, of course, to feed him. And usually I'd take him downstairs and kind of like watch TV because it takes a while. But we've really been trying to keep it calm and quiet for his sake. And I'm actually finding it helps me a lot. So we make sure we're always in a dark room. It's quiet. And we rock him and feed him to sleep. And then I don't have anything on, like no lights or anything when I'm rocking him to sleep. And it's amazing how that time passes. You have to be so present in that moment, just holding him and rocking him. And I kind of take time to meditate when I'm doing it, which is something that I know a lot of people say they don't have time to do. So I'm like, hey, I'll take this time to kind of meditate while I'm holding him. And it's amazing how the time passes when you're so present.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and it helps me to fall asleep afterwards instead of watching a show that winds me up and then I'm like, oh, I'll finish this episode or I'll watch a movie and then I'm up longer. It helps me to go back to sleep. So that's been a big help.
And just for people who are just joining us, we're talking about Michael, who is 5 weeks old today.
Yay!
So lots of learning, lots of new stuff happening.
And do you find that Michael goes back to sleep quicker?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the nighttime, it makes it a lot better for both of us because there's no distractions, there's no lights, there's no sounds. So I think it helps him to signal to him that this is nighttime and this is when we sleep.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, well, he's looking over. He looks very curious. He's wondering what we're doing. So we are going to go say hi. We hope you enjoyed the episode and we hope you can join us again next week. Bye for now.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.